I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is market historian Bob Hoye. He's the chief investment strategist for InstitutionalAdvisors.com. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Yeah, Jim, good morning to you.
Ottawa seems to be puffing out their chest a little bit. Canadian GDP twice what they expected in January, with manufacturing getting most of the credit. Is this really something they should be proud of?
Well, no, because government really is a depressant on business activity. And then they set themselves up with economic advisors and a central bank, all under the concept that the economy can be managed. There's no doubt there has been an uptick in business activity, but the government is happening despite the government's efforts to discourage most business and enterprise and individuals. They assume the state is the munificent and will provide everything to everybody, and so it's this insane increase in the deficit. They're spending money faster than the economy can make it. And so they're off on the wrong track. And yes, you would welcome an uptick in business activity, but to have the government claim credit for it is a bit absurd.
Then what about all these Christy Clark ads claiming her government is responsible for the best job growth in Canada?
Well, you'd expect that from an incumbent government, and you also in British Columbia have had a good economic results over the last while, and I don't see any fault there.
Is it best for governments, though, to just get the hell out of the way and let free enterprise be free enterprise?
Oh, yeah, there was a philosopher back in the 1870s or something like that, Spencer, and he was quoted as saying to government, "Please don't rain on our parade." And yes, you have to have a government. The idea originally of forming government was for mutual protection. And that means military, it means a justice system, and then a constitution to control the government. But that's gone out the window over the last 50 or 60 years, so whereby government has become a predator and on the notion that it can provide goods and services, but it can't provide goods and services to everyone in the economy. So then it only provides to their favorite voting bloc, and it's a very corrupt system. And what you have now is, in many jurisdictions, the general public is looking at this contract between government and the people and realizing that, hey, the governing classes are living well. They don't know what they're doing. Their promises are a bunch of garbage. And down here, ordinary citizen, we're not doing so well. And I've called this, and other historians have called it, a popular uprising. And there have been many. They date all the way back to dynastic changes in ancient Egypt. And it is as simple as that. The public looks at the governing classes, they're living too well, and start a movement. It's hard to explain when it starts, but you have the authoritarian side, and that's a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week job of imposing your will. And then on the public side, it's a submission, sort of a complacency of suffering far too much repression. And then there's a sort of an instant when the public realizes, hey, we can change these guys. So this is what's happening most dramatically in the United States, and with less drama in England with the Brexit over there. England is moving to get away from an authoritarian government in Europe that it was imposing its will upon England, and largely unelected people and unaccountable bureaucrats. Absolutely insane system. So, and this, of course, on the U.S. side, it's very exciting, because when Trump first announced that he was going to run for the nomination, it was a recognizable figure getting up there and in a loud voice saying no to political correctness. First time it happened, and the politically correct people are having a problem with it ever since. And the election results locked in the first step in a popular reform of big government. And the way I look at it is the uprising is the movement, and Trump and the administration is the executive of that movement. And there's many entrenched opinions, and that like it's, say for example, with the Democrats and their media, they would not criticize an administration that was just like Obama's, like being politically correct. So every issue is used to try and make sure that the new administration is politically correct. But the public voted out political correctness. And the media that supports political correctness has been diminishing, and alternative points of view are conveying the political shift. And we haven't seen it. Well, actually, the last popular uprising that was very effective was in Eastern Europe, when the folks there in the 1980s got fed up with the arrangement with the governing classes and overthrew them. And with the symbol being the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989, and then the collapse of organized communism, which was a remarkable feat, because the public then had to take on a state that was potentially murderous with tanks and AK-47s. Remember what uprisings in Hungary, with the Hungarian uprising in 1956 or 57, and then in Czechoslovakia, and it was called the Prague Spring. That was 1968. Now, they were murderously quelled. So here we are. You had a successful uprising in Eastern Europe, and now you're having another uprising, this time in the United States. And so far it's been successful. It's going to be very difficult. But the problem there is it looks extremely disruptive, and it looks chaotic. And what you're dealing with is those who have been forced out of office and forced out of power, which is going to be a process. They are acting like a 4-year-old with a tantrum. Now, how long can a parent stand that? So here it is. I'm very easy in using that parallel. You have a whole political class out there that's having a tantrum because there's been the uprising, which is saying, we've had enough of your expertise and intrusion and superstitions about climate change and global warming and all that sort of stuff. So very exciting times, Jim.
We'll have more with Bob Hoye right after the break.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Hoye. Bob, how do you explain the economic success of Germany? What's been their secret?
Well, of course, Germany was completely devastated at the end of the war, and it was being run by the military, the Brits, the Russians, and the Americans. And I can't remember his name now. Adnar? His nickname was Der Alt because he was an older politician. So he, at one point, when these military officers and committees were running it, and they had restrictions on this and restrictions on that, and the currency was hopeless. It was a cigarette currency. Actually, everything was traded off cigarettes. But one day, Der Alt gets up and says, all of these controls, currency controls, and everything, are over, it's finished. And it was a coup d'etat, so to speak, because it bypassed the de facto administration. And then away it went. And West Germany was wonderful because they liked to work. And, of course, the example was East Germany, where somehow the corrupt communist government prevented or curbed the German ability to work. So Germans' prosperity has been outstanding, but of late, now their politics are gone all to hell with the idea that the big government is what we need, and the public is beginning to say no. And so also the centralizing authority of the European community is coming under stress. Locals are saying, hey, I've had enough of this, and I think the European community will blow up. But throughout it all, Germany will have relatively the best prosperity because they're in a system where people are inclined to work. So in other places, at the moment, you've got Italian 10-year yields are rising relative to German or relative to British yields. So there's credit spread widening there, and the finances of Italy are precarious. So if you have a more serious banking failure discovered in Italy, it's going to start to tear apart the community, because you know how difficult it was when the European community was bailing out Greece. You know, it was when somebody in Germany said, a taxi driver, he says, I have to work until I'm 65 in order to pay for Greeks to retire at age 50. You know, so the market forces are wonderful at sorting things out when you've had distortions, and mainly the distortions have been political, and that is now being questioned, which is a very healthy thing.
Well, I've heard politicians in Italy talking about a return to the lira.
Yeah. One thing about all of history is to have a sound currency. And going way back, you had the florin, which was a gold coin of a certain size, and it was used by all countries. And ideally, you could have a European currency, and if it was gold-backed, that would limit the ambition of governments, and that would be very constructive. As a matter of fact, in any jurisdiction, a gold-backed currency provides limit to government ambition. Because here's how the funding goes. The ambitious governments raise taxes to a confiscatory level, and they know when the public's getting restless with too much taxation, and then that doesn't slow their ambition. So then, through the central bank, they depreciate the currency, and they can raise all kinds of money that way. So the way that this expansion in unlimited government has been financed is through the central banks providing what everybody thinks is unlimited funding. But this is going to come to a nasty end at some point. And because the funding of the ambitious government requires, and what you've had perhaps participated or stroked the most is in the U.S., and the state gets funded on these financial bubbles. But at some point, the series of great financial bubbles comes to an end. I mean, market forces are implacable that way. So we're watching here now for the credit spreads are no longer narrowing, no serious widening, and the yield curve is getting poised for a change. And that says when you get a change in the credit markets, it'll soon be followed by the stock market selling off. But what you have with the change in the credit markets is that the world has been in the greatest bond bubble in history. It's been beyond imagination. And this is where you have the curiosity now in the United States with the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, concurrent with a GDP number that was kind of soft. And they are forced to raise rates because market rates of interest have been rising since June. So you think, well, interest rates rise during a boom. Yeah, they do, but the boom is not in the economy. The boom has been in the financial markets, and changes in the credit markets will push off another bear market in stocks at some point. And then when you have the financial markets deflating, so will the economy. This has happened before with big financial bubbles, but this one just happens to be the biggest one in history.
We'll have more with Bob Hoye right after this.
Avan Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avan's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avanresources.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're chatting with Bob Hoye. Bob, back in May 2016, the Canadian government sold off virtually the last of its gold reserves, leaving us with 77 ounces of gold in our national treasury. Why would a government deplete itself of gold, especially at a time when Russia and China were buying every scrap of gold they could find the last 5 years?
Yeah, it's a theory. The theory is that a committee, now with PhDs in economics, through the central bank and through the Treasury Department, can actually manage the economy. And this is a preposterous and audacious statement. Market forces are too diverse to be managed, and it assumes that there is a national economy isolated from all other economies. Hey, Canada. We got a 4,000-mile long border with the biggest economy in the world. And so then the idea of a Canadian economy isolated from the U.S. is ridiculous. So the theories of intrusive central planning have been bogus all the way along. But one of the things is that when a currency is on a gold standard, the public has the choice of which money to deal in, the banknotes, currency, dollars, or in gold. And that then is a discipline. Now, for the intrusive policymakers, they see that as a constraint upon their ability to manage the economy. So the end result is that the establishment does not want any constraint on its ability to expand government. Whereas if with a gold standard, that then manages the ambition of those in government. And over hundreds and hundreds of years, when a government currency is on a gold standard, it works. And I believe as part of the popular uprising that the public will eventually figure it out and insist that the central bankers are hopeless. They should end their intrusion, and one of the ways of doing that is by going to a gold standard. So that Canadians sold down to virtually zero gold was an ideological struggle where anybody who has been trained in economics, especially in intrusive economics, hate gold. And so the same thing with England, where the Bank of England sold out the Brit gold all the way down to the low, what was it, $254. They got the low trade. And so it is strictly, it's happening because people who believe in strong central planning just don't like gold. And they really don't like the idea of a gold standard because it inhibits their ambition. And that's the point of a gold standard, is to inhibit government ambition. So I think all of these things are going to be up for question, examination, and all of the institutions of government are going to be looked at and praised, and those that are excessive will be trimmed, and those that are just plain stupid will be thrown out. So this is a very exciting time to be alert to what's going on.
Bob, what kind of an economic benefit do we get with the federal government running up a $28.5 billion deficit?
It's a built-in disaster. At some point, obligations have to be met, and it shows an ambition that is not isolated to today, but the ambition of today's statists and big government in Ottawa is so intense that it has to saddle the next couple of generations of taxpayers with a huge debt. And of course, you can go back to Keynes, and he came up with the idea of deficit financing to boost the economy. And that sort of thinking has been around since as early as 1622, when a writer then in England, Misselden, said that all would be well if there was more money available. So it's the same old theories all the way through. But as I say, Jim, we are blessed to be, alert and observant to what's going on now, because it's the most exciting thing since the last time a long experiment in authoritarian government burned itself out and the public began to change it, and that was in the early 1600s. So let's just enjoy it.
And Bob, before we go, we have a listener question from the Netherlands. Willem Grooters wonders, basically, could we see a long-term deflation in the value of land?
Yes, I think so, although it seems impossible to consider now, but one of the things, it's difficult to find a land value index, but years ago I found one in England, and it just ran from 1873, which was the peak of a bubble, a financial bubble, and down to the end of the Depression. And I haven't got that one in front of me now, but there was an index of farmland values created in England, and it fell from something like 58 to 38 over those 20-plus years. And as I recall, there was no upticks on the way down, so each year was down. So earlier today I looked up Consumer Price Index in England, this one prepared by The Economist magazine, and prices rose somewhat with the boom, in the financial boom, to 1873, and this Consumer Price Index got to 111. And then at the bottom of that depression in 1895, it was down to 62. And there's two ways of determining the bottom of a depression. One is exceptionally low commodity prices or consumer items, which was the case there, and also it can happen with the low in interest rates. But just to give you an idea of where the next boom went to, in the big next recovery, the inflation really soared, such that in 1920, that Consumer Price Index got up to 270. That was exceptional, and then as was the crash in commodities in 1921. So it's a good question, and when you're in the midst of soaring prices for real estate, or actually looking at the U.S., we're past it, it's hard to consider there could be a long period of deflation, but I think there will be.
And just like Colombo, Bob, maybe just one more thing that people should know about.
What we're looking at here over the next month or so is the probability of a very dynamic action in all of the financial markets, and many investors should be aware of this. And what we're also doing is offering a very special subscription rate on a trial basis, and one should check out our website on that.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Very good.
My guest has been market historian Bob Hoye. He's the chief investment strategist for institutionaladvisors.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. You can forward questions to the show or to Bob to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.